Welcome to Chew the Fat. In this series, I sit down with high-performance guests and we talk about life, business, and what it takes to be at the top. This is part of my mission to raise $1 million for charity by writing a cookbook called Eat with Purpose. But I'm going to need your help. If you can share the content and leave a review, it's going to make a massive impact. And the bigger the audience, the greater the reach, and the sooner we can get to that $1 million goal. Enjoy the episode. So we've got a seared steak on top of, I want to say a Thai beef salad, but at the same time, it's the Frank's version. So let's tuck in.
Oh, this is so good.
No.
No.
That is good. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, no, you are. Great with them. Disarm a guest. Kind of just hit him. Oh.
Daniel Flynn, co-founder and managing director of Thank You. Welcome to Chew the Fat.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Where I'd love to start, what is your mission on this earth, Daniel?
Just start real small, man. I think I'm discovering the answer to that question of what is my mission on earth. But I definitely feel like I'm meant to be here. I have a role to play, and I think we all have a role to play more than we know. And certainly the history tells me that this mission is caught up in helping others. This mission is caught up in seeing maybe the way the world is and imagining how it could be. And not the only person doing that, many people, but I think if I live my life right at the end, that's what it will look like, different to maybe how it is today.
And why do you reckon that's so important to you?
I think at an early age, I started asking some big questions, like, why am I here? I had a curious mind, and I grew up in a beautiful home. My parents are really positive, great view of the world. And I grew up in like a faith background and context. And so I would often hear that we're here for a purpose and a plan, and that this isn't for other people, but this is for us. And so I would often ask, well, what's my plan? And I've probably spent my whole life asking that question, what is my plan? And I think I'm discovering it chapter by chapter. And so I think it was in me early. Maybe it's in all of us. I think we all want to figure out, why am I here? Why is this here? And these are good questions to ask. I think we live in an age where we're almost robbed of discovering that question because fast everything, fast fashion, fast food, fast swipe, and we get distracted from the stuff that matters. And I think this stuff matters.
I love that. And your current chapter, a very big one, a very important one, is the Thank You brand. For those who may be living under a rock, haven't gone to Woolworths, haven't gone to Coles, what is Thank You?
Cool. So we're a social enterprise that sells consumer products like hand wash and body wash. Actually now over 70 products in home cleaning, and we exist all for the end of extreme poverty. So our mission is sell you the best product, both for you, for the planet, and then for people. And we take our profit and we give that to helping end extreme poverty. So to date, we've backed $18.1 million out to change makers. So not us, but others who are changing the world, charities, incredible innovators. We take the money that we're already spending and we back the change that needs to happen.
That's awesome. $18.1 million.
Yeah.
That's cool.
The number's growing.
Of course. Well, some of the research I listened to was last time one of the podcasts was 16, so it's growing fast. Yeah, that's awesome. And I have to, for everybody that doesn't know, we filmed Chew the Fat at my house.
Yes.
And one of the things I wrote down today when I was writing my recipes, I was like, I've got to make sure that I have Thank You hand soap at the house.
You've got it. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
And then I went down, checked it. There you go. I got Thank You hand soap. Check my son's baby wipes. Yeah. Thank You, baby wipes. So,
and honestly, I didn't check, but when I'm in the bathroom, you can tell when someone just bought it.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell.
Yeah.
I was like, no, this is legit. Yeah. Either he's got it from a friend as an old bottle, or you legit have it.
Or he's a genius and he's siphoned it into another bottle. So, why do you think let me start again. One of the challenges that I have, especially in Australia, and we see it with the tall poppy syndrome, is around people hear an amazing business, amazing brand, amazing organization like Thank You.
Yeah.
And sometimes they can be cynical. They go, well, why isn't it a charity? You know, is the money going in the right place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How, For those who don't know, how do you structure it to make sure that you're making the biggest impact?
I mean, there's two parts to that. The structure side's easy, where we from day one wanted this to exist all for the mission. So we kind of took it pretty literally. We're like, well, what if the founders don't have equity? What if there aren't shareholders? What if the business is owned 100% by a charitable trust? So we do that. It's registered with the Australian Charities Commission. It's audited every single year from day one. All of the benefit of this business, selling product, we hire amazing people to do great work. That is all for the mission. We derive our profits and that goes out. That's sort of the easy bit. What you said at the beginning, this tall poppy, people's skepticism. I mean, this is the dark side of Australia, I think. And I haven't experienced this all around the world. In fact, in America, it's almost like the opposite of tall poppy. It's like water the poppy.
Yeah.
Like if you say you have a dream, they're like, go, I'll help you. And the bigger the dream, the bigger you get backed. Here, I think there is a healthy, natural skepticism. And I think that is important. I'm naturally a little bit skeptical. I hear a new idea, someone says they're doing good. I'm like, interesting, right? So I think that an element of that is unhealthy, or is healthy, because some people are bad actors. They go out, they claim one thing, they do another. Our world doesn't need that. But our world does need ideas, and particularly ideas that change the world around us, and it needs it at scale. So yeah, I have a challenge when it comes to social good in Australia, where people set out to do good and others start just tearing it down. Because I think it's counterproductive. However, I think Australia's been a great learning territory for us as a brand, because it's a bit hard. People do not believe you. People question you. People still do. And I think that's helped us think about, okay, well, how could we overcome that objection and that objection? And it's probably got us more ready for other countries than we realize. And
how do you overcome it, personally and as a brand?
So I think that there's one secret. It's a secret that's not a secret. It's time. So my dad said to me as a kid, he said, Daniel, a person of integrity expects to be believed. And when they're not, they let time prove them right. And so for me, that's a big backstop. Like, our house is in order. Everything's audited. It's structured. But that doesn't mean people will believe. In fact, often, and sometimes I've read the articles where they pull a fact out of context here and one out of context there, and they have a go. And I remember the first time this happened in an article with a unnamed news outlet. But like, I remember reading it and I was like, oh, this sucks. Like, we have so many people behind the scenes working so hard on this mission. How is this the story? And as we all know, bad news or facts out of context, they travel fast, man. Real fast. Yeah. And all the good media we had almost counted for nothing. But I remember writing a response to that article. Yeah. And it clearly outlaid every claim that was made and our sort of position. And it was, well thought through. The reality is a very small number of people will read it, but I wrote it. And at the very bottom, I said this quote by Mother Teresa, which I'll probably end up getting wrong, but it says something along the lines of, if people, oh man, I wish I need to remember this right now in this moment, but if people accuse you of doing the wrong thing, do good anyway. Sorry, if you're doing the right thing and people accuse you of doing the wrong thing, do good anyway. Yes. And then below that, I wrote, to date, we've given, I think at the time it was $76,000 away. Wow. And then I wrote, and this is just the beginning. Yes. And then the next time the article happened, and years later, about a decade later, we get hit again. Yes. And it was different, but kind of similar. And we wrote our response, and at the bottom, I think it was $7 million given. And just a year on from that, we hit over 15 million. And we kept growing. And so for me, there's an element of time. Like, we have to have our house in order. I think if we make a mistake and to let the cat out of the bag, we make mistakes. We are human. As an organization, we're human. And when we get it wrong, our job is to learn from that. Our job is to be transparent, even if it hurts. And then our job is to do better in the future. And so we will continue to do that. And that, again, takes time. And on the process, we may lose some people. And I'm like, that's cool. Hopefully one day they'll come back, because they'll see, man, those guys are still standing. And they've got up again and again and again.
Bring me to one of those big mistakes. What have you done?
It's funny, we're talking about failure as a team recently, because I bumped into a coach. He coaches some of the most influential companies in the world. He goes into the boardroom and he speaks to them, and he he challenged me. He said, Daniel, I read your book, chapter 1, in 2 days. I was like, cool. And like he said it. I'm like, I wonder if he did, but he said it. And then he said, on page 82, I'm like, oh God. and he said, you talk about having this fear of failure, and you talk about failure and failing fast, but I read your book and I do not believe you believe I do not believe you believe in the concept of failing fast. I was like, help me. and he said, so we've all heard in business this idea of fail fast and go again. He's like, he frames this word failure as feedback. He says there's no such thing as failure. It's just feedback, a new piece of feedback that you learn about the market, about a situation, about a team. And it's a piece of feedback that you use to better, build for the future. He said, littered through your entire story at Thank You, you have all these, like, you call them failures, but they're these feedback points. And I've read the story. They build to a better future that you couldn't have had without the feedback. So did you fail or was it feedback? Good point. So chapter 2, the next book we write, will be like, there's no such thing as failure. And I think I do like that idea because our greatest failures, when we haven't had a mistake, like an integrity mistake, which I'm glad of. Like there's been no money stolen. There's been no integrity mistake. There's been people criticize us of, oh, did you spend too much money on, this or that or marketing? And it's like, well, that's a tricky conundrum in consumer goods in any space. So we've had critique, but we haven't had any, we've broken a law or broken a guideline or a rule in the charity space. And I'm really grateful, not just to me, but all the people in our team, everyone who's managed money, all the directors. Like it's a high trust environment with some good backstops. I'm glad we haven't really messed up there. I think the failures, which are really feedback points, we went big. We went big with ideas and we learnt. We learnt what worked, what didn't. How long do you have? I mean, we launched into bottled water. That to us was an amazing start because it was controversial. Like we wanted to cut through the noise of consumerism and say, hey, consumerism's big. Shockingly, in 2008, we spent $50 billion globally on bottled water. And we said, that's bizarre. Meanwhile, 900 million people don't have access to clean water. So if a brand of bottled water is going to exist, we think one should exist to right this wrong. Give the profit to funding water projects. So that was our launch. And in our minds, we're like, what a cool product, shocking, but cool product to teach people thank you. And then one day we could transfer it to more and more things. And so was that a mistake? No. Was it controversial? Yes. And
Why was it controversial?
So bottled water, I think, has been environmental enemy number one for a long time. And I think it's because, it's funny, I mean, this also could be an hour on this topic because I think it's fascinating that we would say bottled water shouldn't exist. You can get tap water for free. True. On a flip side, if you were out and you needed a drink, actually water, and if you didn't have a reusable bottle, a bottle of water is going to be for you healthier than a processed juice. Certainly a soft drink, not to name Coca-Cola, like just filthy bad stuff. Right? So it's better for you.
That is interesting.
Even more interesting, and this is now going to start getting controversial, but even more interesting is the plastic used for, say, a soft drink is way thicker than a plastic bottle. The water wastage, I used to hear people say, man, bottled water is such a waste because for every 1 liter of water you make, it takes 2 liters to make a liter, which is true. And it sounds bizarre. But in orange juice, someone needs to fact check this, it's something like 50 liters of water to make a liter of orange juice. Beer's even more than that.
I guess that makes sense because you've got to grow the trees, all that.
So from a plastic waste water usage, all of a sudden, bottled water is kind of the good one. What? I didn't say that. I never said that. So we, those who know the story, we exited bottled water. And again, it was feedback from the market. We were pioneering a social enterprise space. We had environmental enemy number one. And we thought, is this overall helping our brand story or is it hurting? And I actually found myself in a lot of rooms, all of our team did, sharing the good news about flipping consumerism on its head. But a stumbling block for many people was like, yeah, but you have bottled water. And you're like, yeah, how long have you got? And so we made this really interesting call to pull it off the shelf.
Can you help me contextualize that? Like, what were the numbers? Like, what was the, if you're allowed to share, like how many millions of dollars worth of water were you selling? Because that's a big decision. Like, I think people hear that and it's like, oh, we turned it off. It's like, it's a big decision from a organization standpoint, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, at one point, bottled water was 100% of our revenue.
Yeah.
We obviously diversified, but we're still selling millions of units every year, millions of dollars contributing to not just revenue. I mean, it was one of our most profitable lines. Bottled water's profitable.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to make, right? So the day we decided we're gonna switch this off, we did a staged approach. So we launched Thank You into New Zealand.
Yep.
We didn't take water.
Yeah.
And that was a test. It was like, could Thank You exist without water? Yes or no? Because it was our history. And we proved to ourselves, yeah, no, it can. Cool. Then when we pulled it off the shelf, it was amazing. Actually, retailers were like, what? Like, what are you replacing it with? Like, nothing. We're out. I remember The Guardian wrote a really positive piece around the bold step.
Yeah.
But the bolder step was actually looking at our P&L because a lot of money just pulled straight out. And in our heart, we thought two things. We thought, there is a space in the bottled water category that we think we could one day play in. The innovation's not there yet. The only innovation that's close is actually greenwashing. We can't do that.
Like, explain greenwashing to me.
So greenwashing is the, cause washing and greenwashing, terms given to when you project good.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you do it well enough, you could have 98% of a room going, wow, it's biodegradable, it's everything.
Yeah.
You'll have 1 or 2% of people who actually know, and they'll be like, no, but the full life cycle analysis of this quote unquote biodegradability is worse when you take into account carbon, manufacturing processes. It's worse than what you were getting away from, but it sounds better.
Yes.
And so I'd say there's a lot of that going on. So we thought, we can't be that.
Yeah.
I mean, we could be that, but we're mission driven. We're not like profit marketing driven. We're mission driven. So we're like, okay, so the change we see in the category, we can't launch yet because the innovation's not there. Where we're at isn't right. Doesn't feel right as a brand. So we pulled out. And I think it was the right call for Thank You. If you're wondering what happened to the industry, man, bottled water grew. It's still growing. Like, and that to me is sort of the reminder to all of us as consumers. We project ideas like, yeah, bottled water's ridiculous. None of us buy it. How did it grow from 50 billion to right now 350 billion? Like we pulled out. I don't know what everyone else do. Like everyone's kept buying it. So I think, and that's a global number, but in some countries, bottled water is
the only water.
There's a whole bunch of reasons, but I still think consumers are fascinating, and I'm one of them.
That's actually really interesting. Do you know what else is interesting? The Eat with Purpose cookbook. It's part of my mission to raise $1 million for charity. This podcast is a part of that goal, and what you can do is like, comment, share, and leave us a review. Let's get back to the guest.
We can be very fickle. We can project one thing, do another. And there's an interesting study, and now we're in a rabbit warren, I've got to pull out. But there's an interesting study that talks about 76% of consumers say that sustainability drives a purchase or a choice. The post-purchase data is, I think, about 8 or 9% actually affected the decision. So I think the people we all want to be is here. I think the reality of the world and where we're at is often here. And so as a consumer brand that is a social enterprise, we navigate this space between tension. Yeah.
And how did you, and I think this might be the terrible capitalist in me that I need to push down each and every day. When I heard that story, the first thing I thought about was exactly that. The category won't change if it's not me and I can actually pass through that, which is what you were doing to do good. It's going to be someone else. Like, how did you wrestle with that? Because I'm sure that popped into your mind.
Yeah, I mean, we wrestled with it a lot. There's many decisions that Thank You we've wrestled with, and it's interesting. I think often we draw very quick conclusions, and we're sort of forced to in business to draw a quick conclusion. Was that a right call or a wrong call? And I'm not completely against this ethos, but I do think time is a factor sometimes we don't allow enough for. Because in time, let's say the plan we have, which, keeps being delayed because it's really tricky, but let's say we can land it. And we dream of it every day. We're like, man, and that would change everything. And so if we land that, I think this conversation will be fascinating because one would argue, okay, you communicated to the market genuine mission-based decision. You were playing for not a short-term commercial gain. You were willing to forego something because as a brand, you took a stand. that in time you came back and really, really disrupted. So I think at that point, the podcast would be like, man, what great like long-term thinking. But like every day in between, we're like, was that the right call?
Yeah.
Man, it would be so helpful to have that money. We could have distributed more profits to helping people get access to water and food. And so look, again, that's where you find us. I hear that part of you though, and that's part of the wrestle. But at least we're up for wrestling it.
Yeah. No, I love it. And you know, I'm incredibly fascinated. I was really lucky. I met a guy by the name of Yasser. And Yasser, he worked in the in government to help people with disabilities. And he realized that, and I think it's a challenge that you saw in the early days of Thank You was, you know, having a non-for-profit and having to go and raise money. You're kind of, rather than innovating and building product, you're on a continual roadshow to get access to more funds than actually, you know, be able to fully focus on helping. And so what Yasser made a decision was he's going to start a for-profit organization where his whole mission was to create an ecosystem that helped people with disabilities, every different kind of version you can imagine, old people, young people, blind, whatever it might be. And what he figured out is the more money the business can generate, the bigger the impact. And then what he did is built the entire supply chain around it. So for example, one of his categories is importing cheese from Saudi Arabia. 70% of the workers who pack and make the cheese have disabilities. And then he believes it's his it's his obligation to pay them fair wage rather than going to get government handouts. And so what he's done is built an entire ecosystem around this impact. And it's a long story, but I want to share it with you because it's something that I've started to, you know, as the shift in my world has changed and, you know, I've sold a business, it's like, I feel like there'd be something, you know, that extra flame inside, knowing that kind of every step along the way you're making an impact. So back to the question. What is it like inside an organization to have people who are driven by such a mission? Like I can see it in your eyes. You deeply believe in this mission.
There was a family office, actually someone who ran the family office for a particularly very wealthy family, and they do a lot of investment. So they give philanthropically and they invest in startups. And he walked through the office, and I think this sums it up to me. Because as we finished the tour, he turned to me. He's like, Daniel, can you explain to me why I felt like just then I'd introduced him to the team. I think at the time it was about 25. I feel like I just met 25 founders. He said, usually I can tell the difference straight away between a founder and a team member or the senior management. This feels very different to me. Why? Now, I live in the thank you bubble at this point. So I'm like, and I was like, oh, I think it's the mission. We help people. And he said, it couldn't be that. So he had me on my okay, tell me. You asked the question, I tried. He's like, it couldn't be that because I've been to charities that exist all for a mission. And the divide sometimes is even greater and the culture isn't what this is. I was like, that's interesting. And the more I reflected on that, I didn't have an answer for him that day, but the more I started to grapple with this idea of when people, each of us wake up to purpose, why am I here and what is the contribution I can have? Which purpose I think is so multifaceted and it's found in the cause that you might be fighting for. So thank you. There's an absolute mission to end extreme poverty. There's a mission to create more sustainable, thoughtful consumerism and really, really challenge the system. There is, I think for our design team, a chance to create things that have maybe never been created before. And for a designer, once you put those three things together, you've got something inside you that would feel like when you met a founder. And so, look, I wish in all of the history of Thank You, every time you ever met a Thank You team member, you're like, oh yeah, they're all like founders. And I'd say sometimes we did a good job leading, sometimes we didn't do a good job leading. But I think in answer to your question, what is it like? I think when you get the balance right, when people are mission and purpose driven, they will do their life's best work, of which probably industry will go on to give awards for. And others will go on and say, I don't even know how they did it. And often a remark we would get is, how is a team as small as yours or as under-resourced without investment? Like how did you pull that off? And it's because, well, they're on mission.
I'm inspired. That is, Yeah, I can see it, I can imagine it, and I can imagine the impact that it would have. There was something that you touched on around having that person walk through, and I'm really curious. With the growing success of your brand, as well as your personal brand and all the talking you're doing, I know you've been able to meet some incredible people. Have you met other people in this mission impact driven organizations that have inspired you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the cool part of doing stuff like this is you end up just mixing in different circles and connecting. And I think, there are many amazing mission-led leaders around the world. I mean, locally, I think of Simon who gives a crap, and they do amazing work. And I'm not sure if you interviewed Simon yet, but he's the best. He's so funny. He's so funny.
We use his toilet paper, so that's
perfect. I'll check there. But I think it's incredible. I think it's it's incredible, and there are so many social businesses. I mean, a real hero of mine in America, his name's Scott Harrison. Scott and Vic, in fact, incredible couple who started and ran Charity Water and still do. And Charity Water is a charity.
Charity Water. That video, there's a YouTube video that's like 32 minutes.
Bro.
Charity Water is the reason that, a spark that happened inside me, the reason for Eat With Purpose, and the reason I'm doing this journey is because what I saw from that video, 32-minute YouTube video, and his story, and then listening to him, Stephen Bartlett, I was in tears. That was a spark that was created about 3 years ago. So shout out.
So in 2008, I remember coming across Scott and Vic and their story, and I was so moved, and it really impacted me. And I never forget, we launched, when we launched our book, Chapter 1, we had a video, and it was this 7-minute video. It was shot in one take, which turns out was wildly ambitious of us, but we pulled it off. It launched on maybe a Thursday or Friday, and on the Saturday or Sunday, there was a note on social from Scott Harrison.
Yes.
Amazing. I was like, no, he's watched the video. And we couldn't believe it. And then Justin and I had a huge honor to go and connect with both of them at their office, and their office was insane in New York, and hear more of their story. And, I think is a common thread for mission-led leaders is what is behind the podcasts and what is behind the books and the stages and the rounds of applause. We know everyone's had a hard run, but I think what's underestimated is the level of sacrifice that people go. And I think different people over the years have sort of almost shown, hey, here's a little bit of, and you're like, man, you're already the real deal. You're really the real deal. And the mission that you're walking is hard. I mean, it's hard at Charity Water to face up to some of the numbers of people who don't have access to clean water. It's hard for them to get out there and go again and again and again. But not only are they doing that, and Scott and Vic and the impact that Charity Water has had in the world is remarkable, but we're here because you watched their video, and now it's sparking you to go on to raise money, and it impacted me, and that's the coolest part of it.
That's the very cool part, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. I was recently on a podcast myself, and apologies, this is not the Frank show, but I feel like a good part of this conversation is I was on a podcast with a guy. Look, he kind of essentially challenged the whole concept of you're raising $1 million for charity. Cool. And he was like, why? And I was kind of like, he's like, kind of essentially like, why don't you just carve off a check?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? It would be much easier. It would have been much easier. It would have taken about 1.5 years less time. And I said, but part of this for me is, well, what if I can inspire a few people to do the same? You know what I mean? And so I reflect on that video, and I'm just one random person doing one little small thing. You imagine that impact around the world with the millions and millions of views. I think that is equally a part. That's why I wanted to have you on here today is there's the thank you brand and the impact you do, but there's the ripple effects of as more and more people get inspired, and more people bring impact into the business. I think that's where things start to change.
Yeah. And look, it's interesting. I mean, I didn't watch the podcast, but the comments you make, because there's a natural skepticism. People are like, oh, you did well, you exited a company, now you want to raise some money, and why don't you just cover off a check? It's a fascinating comment. I think one of the challenges in business is, and particularly when you think about business and philanthropy, is people take risk more so for business, for for-profit gain than they do for philanthropy. And what we're discovering in this sort of social ventures is people are like, whoa, those people are taking huge risk for a cause. And so it's a lot to put yourself out there. But I think what's interesting for yourself, you're an entrepreneur and you've taken massive risk and had huge win. And the idea of you going again, but for mission, yeah, I mean, I'm not challenging you to go higher on the number, but I just think like at the end of the day, you're the type of person with the networks and with the mind that if you set your mind to anything, man, you'll do it.
I want to make $1 million look laughable. That's what I want. And that brings me to a question I ask every one of the guests. Sure. It's a bit of a selfish guess, but a selfish question, but this podcast is for my mission. It's for the mission. The reason I decided to write a cookbook is I didn't want to go and ask for money. I wanted to produce something, like thank yous. It's something you want to have. And hey, 100% of the revenue is going to go to charity.
Cool.
So my question is, knowing you've gone on this journey, what are the watch outs for me when it comes to building that product and selling it?
Man, how long do we have? So there's a really interesting rule we live by at Thank You. It came from a great book, actually a book I highly recommend to anyone in the kind of purpose marketing business space. The book is called Do Purpose, Why Brands That Do Good Matter More. Forget who it's by, but an amazing person. Apologies if they're listening. But it's an amazing book, and it's one of those picture books that's like real fast to read with like big words,
Lovely.
right? But
That's
every page like hits you. So this page, I opened it on the plane and it hit me. Rule 1, make great product. Rule 2, never break rule 1.
Yes.
With an asterisk on rule 2 that says never use a good cause to sell an average product.
Love that.
And so that we have spent our whole life at Thank You unpacking that. But one of the great illusions of cause and mission is people think, well, if the product's same, but cause, people will love it. Not our experience. In fact, we launched into the food category years ago. Callum Hand, who won MasterChef All-Stars, joined our team as our Chief Taste Officer, which is a cool title, CTO. And he developed the most incredible range. And we had oats, so rolled oats, which transparently was the same exact oats that the unnamed big companies and the unnamed home brands use. So the same oat, we packaged that up in the Thank You box. We also made these like quite innovative muesli, granolas, and a whole bunch of stuff. This stuff flew. This stuff failed. Yeah, this is same but cause.
Yeah.
But it, I think it's a phenomenal challenge to you and to anyone is like, how do I make a cookbook in this whole experience that if I took the $1 million, the cause, the mission away, actually would sell just because it's the best. Then when you add the mission, hopefully that doubles the loyalty and the revenue and the word of mouth and it takes it to the moon. So that's our approach at Thank You. And I think it's a huge challenge because there's a lot of work involved in that. And I think it's easy to sometimes think the cause will sell it. My experience is the cause and the mission, even if Thank You gets you in the room, it might get you a smile at the start of the meeting. But if everything else does not stack up and is not truly remarkable,
That's cool. That is great. Love that. So let me pivot a little bit because I am truly fascinated by Thank You as an organization. It is a business, just where the money goes is somewhere different. And one of the things that I'm fascinated about and I heard about is around like the way you guys think about innovation and the different categories. Can you kind of help lift the lid, if you may, around what are some of the other things you're thinking about beyond what you have on the shelves today?
Oh man. So this is special. I mean, really what I said to you just then in the 2 rules.
Yeah.
So our ambition was, imagine if you could make products that for you and I, we would want to buy them regardless of the cause, just because we love the design, love what it did maybe for our body, what it did for the planet. And then you add people on top of that. And hopefully that's the loyalty. Now, that sounds good. It's really hard because you're up against companies who have innovation teams in the hundreds or thousands. They've got budgets in the tens and hundreds of millions in innovation. So the question becomes, well, how do you out-innovate them? Because make no mistake at Thank You, we have to. If we can't out-innovate them while we are a subpar or superior product, and that's not good. So we've been on this journey of how do we unlock that. And this is where the cause, I keep kicking that line.
That's all right.
This is where the mission pays off because I've discovered and I really believe that our mission, it's it's the fuel on the inside. So it's not the paint on the outside, even though people are like, oh, it must help in the marketing. So, well, it's the fuel on the inside, and it's driven us to the point that we do great work. But then when we've invited others to join us, it turns out they've brought their best. Early days, the personal care range, the hand wash, body wash, it's in your bathroom that I checked. So that early days, we had this French perfumist who was like 7th generation perfumist. And the first time we met him, he spoke about fragrance. Like, it was so beautiful, romantic. And in fact, I joke in the first meeting because he's talking in his sort of French accent, thick accent. He said, "You probably think I have a big nose." And I'm like, I don't know how to respond to that. Like, how do you respond? And then he's like, "We think our family over generations, it's growing." Like, I was like, "Man, we're in." Like, this guy lives and breathes it. And actually, his work in fragrance, which is a very specialized space, it unlocked literally market-leading fragrances.
Wow.
It's incredible. Now, on the sort of the train of French people, we have right now our deodorant, which I'm wearing, and we've just launched into the market. It is a Australian first. It's a 100% natural origin. That's 48-hour antiperspirant. Usually those two ideas don't go together. They're separate. If you want that level of efficacy, you need a chemical, and you need to sort of potentially harm, but you get the antiperspirant. We've got both, and it's because of a man named Gilles, who I met actually in Australia. He just exited one of his companies, right? He did pretty well, 230 million euro.
Oh, poor guy.
Poor guy. It's a shocking currency, isn't it, to get an exit? So he did well, and that's a public number that I'm sharing. But he did this like holiday with his family around Australia, and every Airbnb, he's like, I would go, and there'd be this thank you.
Love that.
I'm like, what's thank you? Because I read the label, then I read the website, and then I had to find you. And I met him here in Sydney, in this little cafe, and I was like, he's like, "Daniel, I think I could take this to Europe," and he's telling me these big dreams. I'm like, we need to do a background check. He's the real deal. Now, he developed an innovation in deodorant that he calls his life's best work. So right now, we've got that product, and it's arrived in bulk from France. We now pack it locally here in Australia with our sustainable, refillable bottles. It's on shelf in Coles. It's available at thankyou.co, our online store. I'm just plugging to try and get product sales. Classic. You plug away. You could buy it. No, don't look at the camera. It's like,
Kai needs it. So
I was gonna.
Here.
But like, to me, I'm like, this is so exciting because as the mission has grown and as word has traveled, more and more people are saying, "Hey, I see what you're doing.
That's cool.
I've got this." And thank you is this story of people getting what's in their hand and bringing it together. It's like, it seems too simple, but it is that. It's like the French perfumist, or you've got this innovator, or this wild story of when we flew the helicopters above the supermarkets. Both pilots who flew that day, they flew these signs for free. They were giant. They carried out big messages and really petitioning the supermarkets to follow us and to back the brand. And the helicopter pilots, what did they have? They knew how to fly. They said yes to one free flight. We found a sponsor for jet fuel, which was quite hard to do. Wow. And so that's what they brought. And so right now, what are we working on? Without wanting to overhype the future, we are working on our boldest product categories and certainly our boldest launches that we've ever planned. And like I was saying to someone recently, I felt like if you combined each of our big breakthrough launches, and there's been quite a few, you put them all together times 10, I think that's what's coming. Now, I'm a hype guy. If I'm wrong, people can look back and go, that guy, I'm never going to believe a word he says. I hope it exceeds all of our expectation. But it's the exact same theory. We know what's in our hand. We've invited others. Turns out what they've got something, and when we put it all together. And our mission here is not how do we create a cool brand? How do we become famous? Our mission is like, how do we change and almost usurp consumerism for good? I often sit back, I'm sure you do. You see the problems in the world, and then you see the billionaires. And it's just so fun to pick on the billionaires. It's like, come on, billionaires. Fix it. And some are. In fact, tomorrow up here in Sydney, I've got a meeting with one who is really, him and his partner they're working on fixing it, right? And some are absolutely fixing it and focus on that. But I think we've missed that we as consumers collectively, we're trillionaires. We spend $63 trillion a year on product. So I'm like, There's billionaires, but we're together. Like individually, it's nothing, but together, it's so much. And so we're laser focused on that. And so, man, I hope one day we're having a chat about like, and then you went into that category, and that unlocked a whole nother. Like, it's amazing that 18 million went, but in the back of our heads, we're like, it's cool, but it's going to take billions, not millions, billions to help end extreme poverty.
Is there a number in your mind that you're like, I want to, there's, you know, like many businesses have that goal, whether that be that $1 billion enterprise, whatever it is. Do you have that number where you're like, I would love to see that number be put out in the world through our brand?
Look, early days, we had some big goals. Even right now, there is a strategy document that's got some big numbers in it. And they're so big that I think even for us, we're like, it's good to dream. Is that too big? And there's a case to say those numbers are too big. But I think there's another case, which is really what drives us to say those numbers are too small. And we want to be careful that we're not just running around saying, we're going to raise X. And that's the mission. I think now I'm realizing the mission is to create a vehicle that probably is going to take a lot longer than even us being around to really, 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 really change a system. And so we've got a job to do, which is get the things established and set up. And I hope we're talking some big numbers one day. But I think what excites me more is that those numbers don't hit and then it's like a fly-by-night story. In one day, out the next. I hope this thing can go. And we can sort of see it just continue because of a foundation that was set. So, yeah, man, there's some numbers in there.
We talked before about you love the process of going and talking at schools.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think I remember when I was young hearing speakers who said things that stuck with me forever. And these are speakers who wouldn't know my name. And you know, but they said something that was like catalytic. Like it changed me. I know for Justine, co-founder and wife, she's similar. She had a specific talk and someone from World Vision, and that sent her on this mission to go on a field trip, and she went on this trip over to Indonesia when she was 14. I think for young people, it's a time in our life where we are open. We haven't become too jaded with the world. Although I would say the challenge to our next generation is that because of social media, that jaded to the world kicks in real early.
Really?
You're just served with so much pain and hate and complexity. But I think for me, this thought of being able to show people you can change stuff. You can. Like you think you can't, but you can. And there's that beautiful Steve Jobs quote that he talks about, the world's a lot simpler when you realize that all the stuff made around you, I'm wrecking a Steve Jobs quote right now, but basically all the stuff made around you is made by people no smarter than you and me. And so that to me is a message of, hey, you can see a problem in the world and you can change it. I remember a speaker once, I think I was in high school, maybe even year 12, but he said, put your thumb out, you know. And so we're all got our thumbs up. He's like, American guy, classic American thing. He's like, do you realize in the history of mankind, there never has been and there never will be anyone with the same fingerprint as you? And I'm like, I've definitely heard that, but this moment is like, just feels so epic. And he said, it's because I believe each of us was made to leave an imprint in this world that no one else can. And when you sit with that, you think, maybe. And so for me, if I get a chance to encourage another young person of that truth, you know, that's a good day in the office.
What's the imprint you want to leave on this world?
That I had the courage to follow that inner voice that I feel like sometimes tells me to go left when maybe it's more popular to go right, to go this way when everyone's saying, nah, you can't go that way. And I don't just mean being really annoying. I mean like being willing to go maybe against the grain to change stuff the way the world is.
As you shared that, I can feel an emotion behind there. Where's that coming from?
I think I've spent a lot of time of my life, and I don't talk about this much because I feel like it needs a context and time, but I spent a lot of time figuring out what's that voice? Where does it come from? Is it me? Is it my head? I mean, sometimes the ideas or the directions just feel so against the grain, but if I pursue it and create it, then people are like, podcasts like, wow, that was amazing, the path you took, and thank you so much for your persistence. I'm like, thank you for saying thank you, but for me, I was following something and this voice and this direction. And so for me, I feel like over the years I've discovered, I don't think that's my voice. I think that might be coming from somewhere else. And this idea of being guided, this idea of like, we're talking about why are we here? I think for me, I feel like I've discovered that. And while at times it may seem lofty or airy-fairy, people talk about, I believe in the universe or a greater being or a God. But for me, I feel like that idea of God became real. And would I sit on this podcast and say, God talks to me every day? I mean, that'd be fun. I definitely think there are moments I cannot explain where it was like, go left. And here we are. So for me, I don't take this as like a just fun. It feels more important than that.
I can see that. Can you give me an example of something we haven't touched on, or where that voice came in and told you to go left, so I can really contextualize that for the audience?
At the very beginning of Thank You, I was so overwhelmed with this whole idea. And I don't mean like excited. I mean like completely overwhelmed. Like I'd caught up with some business people, and in my head it was going to be really encouraging. I told them the world water crisis, the bottled water industry, we need hundreds of thousands of dollars, but if we could get it, then we could solve this. And the feedback was, well, you need investors. I'm like, no, can't have investors. This has to not just smell different. It has to be fundamentally different. People are like, well, you can't do it without investors. It's like, that feels so wrong to me, right? That doesn't feel right. But everyone I met with, it was like, well, here's why it wouldn't work. You're up against the Coca-Cola company. Like people with the more experienced people I met, the more discouraged I became. And I had this moment where I'm in a room. If you want to talk about this sort of left and right voice concept, I'm in a room, and at the back of the room, I'm not listening to the speaker up the front. Now, for context, as a kid, my parents took me to church every week. My teenage years, I think one week I told Dad I'm not going anymore, and I think that's a story for another day. But like it was like but then I end up on my own faith journey, on my own path, and I end up not because of my parents, but because of me in the back of the room. I'm not listening, which is probably not good, but I'm having this little debate in my head. Where does the water idea come from? Am I meant to do it? How would I do it? Everyone says it's impossible. I'm having this and in the back of my head, I'm like, I need to focus on my uni. I need to finish my degree. I need to stick to like my plan, make money. I got to stick to that plan. And then I did something. I wrote about it in our book, chapter 1. And to me, this sums up the voice. In my mind, I was like, if I'm meant to do this water thing, I need a sign. Like, Bruce Almighty, I don't know, he's driving, he's like, give me a sign. And he punches into I think he crashes into a sign truck. Like, I was like, I don't care what this is. I just need a sign. I need to know which way my life should go. And this feels weighty. And then I'm sitting there in the room and on the floor, keep in mind, I've just framed this. I need a sign. There's an old book, all right? Now, it's an old Bible. They're written thousands of years ago. I pick it up. I have a curious, easily distracted mind. I pick it up. I flip it open. And without flipping the pages either way, I look down and I read something I never read before. It was in this book called Isaiah 41, verse 17. It said, the poor and needy search for water, yet find none. Their tongues are parched with thirst, and I, Lord God, have heard their cry, and I'll turn the deserts into springs and the valleys into pools. And I'm at the back of the room, and I'm like, who saw that? Afterwards, I'm like, and I was up the back. I'm thinking about the water thing, and I'm like, and I'm showing, and then I flipped open to this, and someone's like, man, that's an amazing coincidence. I'm like, that's a pretty good one. It's a good one, right? So we could debate, wow, was that a coincidence? It's the only verse in the whole book that, and you flipped open to me, in answer to your question of the voice, to me, that was a moment of like I can't walk away from that. You might be able to, and I did walk away. Many times I walked away going, it got too hard. But that moment did something because it felt to me like, I can't explain all this, but I think I'm meant to do it. And you should have seen our next meeting. the courage of that moment, this courage of like, I think we're meant to do this thing about the water. And so that was, the next meeting was the first factory we landed. He said, love your vision. I'm like, cool. Like this confidence. Our next pitch was to the distributor who in that meeting, our first sales pitch took an order for 50,000 units, to which I'm like, this is what I'm meant to do. Unfortunately, everything after that got hard and it became the valley. And I reopened that book like 50 times being like, was I meant to do it? For me, there is something about this that I find very hard to walk away from. And actually, thank you gets harder, not easier. Like today I sit here, I'm like, do you tell people? You tell people. It gets harder. I mean, scale, your problems get bigger. So do the dreams and the opportunities. Yeah. But for me, I'm like, more than ever, I just want to hear the voice. I want to stick to it. And I may not always get it right. In fact, sometimes I'll get it really wrong. I'm a human. I do my best. We each need to lead, I think, from conviction, whatever that looks like.
Well, I got goosebumps as you were telling that story. Far out. That's man, that is... You know the thing that comes straight to my mind as we have this conversation, and it's been eating me away this entire time we're having it. I know you've been doing this for 15 years, but the conviction, the way you deliver the message, the enthusiasm inside you feels like you've been doing it for 15 minutes. You know, it's like you're a founder on day one. And like, dare I say, I'm almost like jealous because I'm like, wow, like that's incredible. And you know, my question I was going to ask before was like, what drives you? But like, I know what drives you. It's this mission. It's this purpose. It's the thing that burns you inside. So I'm going to do a different question. What do you say to that person who's on the fence, who might be working their job at the university, but there's something inside that's missing that doesn't feel quite right, or they have something burning inside them and they're just not sure to take that leap?
Okay. Well, I would say to this person, you are not alone. You and almost every single one of us on the planet wrestle with this. And even today, even in this interview, I'm wrestling with it in a different way. Like, I'm all in on thank you, but there's some ideas that I'm like, I think we're meant to do it, but are we? Like, you're on the fence, right? I think we're all on that exact fence. But the world seems to be grouped into two groups, if you want to get real binary. Those that were willing to jump off that fence, not knowing exactly how they're going to land, whether they're going to roll an ankle, land in spiky bushes, and others who just stayed on the fence, or maybe even worse, climbed down from the fence, sat down, and just never got to see what's on the other side. So my encouragement to that person is jump. Like, what does jump look like? It looks like send an email, not tomorrow, today. Send the email, send it. Like pick up the phone to someone, book a meeting with a mentor who doesn't even know that they're your mentor yet, but you somehow are just going to somehow catch up with them. Like, jump, take a jump. And what is the worst that could happen? But you could lose your job. Like your current employer could be like, what? You know, so there are some things you could lose. And that's easy for me when I was younger. Now I have a family. You may be on the fencing and I got a whole bunch of responsibilities. I can't just jump. Cool. I think with respect, you're wrong. You can jump. You may not be able to take the same jump you could have taken 5-10 years ago. You can still jump. And I think one of the great things stopping a lot of us is money. And the more committed you get, the more comfy you get. Like if I said right now, look, you could step away from the current job you've got. You could go pack shelves in supermarkets at night, do some other job in the morning and free up a little bit of time in the middle of the day to chase this dream. There's a part of a person listening being like, oh man, that means I risk career progression. That does not look good on my resume. And like, these are all real things to grapple with, but it's still possible. And so I think we jump at thank you a lot off the fence. We don't jump alone. We get good counsel. There's a great old saying that there's a wisdom in a multitude of counselors. Get a lot of, if you can jump out of a plane, check with someone who knows that you can land and there's a parachute. So I would say jump, don't do it alone. And I mean, if you can commit to that, this is what we do again and again and again. Maybe hard to see from the outside, but I'm telling you, this is what we do. We climb the fence. We jump.
And has the jump been worth it for you?
Yeah, that's the bit that I can't put words to, because it's like people often talk about the sacrifices that have been made, or a classic one in business circles is like, man, what's the exit look like? Like the exit in thank you land, because we don't have equity in shares, is that one day we finish. That's the exit. We pass the baton. That's it. And some days I'm like, particularly when you see friends exit a business and they do really well and you read about it in Financial Review and you're like,
how genuinely, how do you wrestle with that?
look,
Because you've built, if we parked the social enterprise and we said that was you building a business, you would built a phenomenally successful, highly profitable business. How do you wrestle with that today? The money side for Daniel Flynn.
Oh, do we have another hour? There's a human part of me in this, which is it is a wrestle, and some days are harder than others, right? Because you're like, you see maybe where someone else lands and you're happy for them, but you're like, man. I think often when people see particular entrepreneurs exit big from a company, it's very easy, particularly in Australia, to criticize and be like they did very well. It's like, it's very hard to describe the actual pain, the actual hours, the actual grind, the actual work. And everyone works hard, but there are risks that people take.
It's the risks.
The risks.
It's the overlay. All those things overlaid with the risk.
Yeah. And so there are some days where we're like, wow, we're taking risk and all that. But in looping back to the last question, yes, there's a wrestle. There are some days where, like, we hop in our car, my car. So we have two cars, but I hop in our car and I tell Jed, I'm like, get in the Tesla. And he's like, Dad, stop calling it a Tesla. It's not a Tesla. Now, it's a Ford Mondeo 2010. It's an old car, but I'm like, Jed, I'm telling you, one day it's just going to be a Tesla. Now, like an old me would have had maybe a Tesla much younger and all that sort of thing. And so I'm okay to just, in my mind, I'm driving a Tesla here. It's not a Tesla. But I think, so there are some days which are interesting, but at a deeper level, back to the last question, I cannot describe the honor, not the sacrifice, but the honor it is to sit in this chair, to be able to be part of this mission. Because the bigger it gets, the more I'm like, man, this is bigger than all of us. This is important. This is needed. And we get to be part. And so that feeling of what are you missing out on quickly kind of shifts on a scale of like, you're missing out to like, what an honor it is. And I do, if I think about my heroes, like I completely messed up a quote before from Mother Teresa. I messed that up. I really need to look that up before an interview. But I look at someone like her, maybe Nelson Mandela. These people, what they did in leadership was quite different. They sacrificed for others, not to be on the front of a magazine, not to win an award, but they sacrificed for others. And it was hard, but there's a joy in it. To me, I'm like, man, that's what an honor it is to be able to do that. And I'm not just saying it. Some days as a human, I do wrestle, like the cut, right? But I'd say the net truth is, it's an honor.
I've got one last question for you. I know we're just at probably the start, the middle of the journey. I know you've got a long road ahead. I can see it in your eyes. But as we reflect, what are you most proud of to date?
I mean, there's a lot of moments. There's a lot of moments where, I mean, from walking in the field and meeting families who didn't have access to food or water or health, and now they do, and being like, wow, we play a part in that. That's cool. The interviews and stages and different places, and I've sat down once with President Obama. He was the interviewer. Like, and for 23 minutes, I'm like, this is a moment I'll never forget. And as cool as all that is, I think it's what I'm most proud of. It's the stuff that probably no camera's ever seen, but it was the moment of going, I think I'm going to follow left, that inner voice, that conviction, when not just like critics said, that will never work. I think sometimes we glamorize this, like, and then everyone said it wouldn't work and we went for it. But I'm talking about what happens when people close to you. Maybe there might be trusted mentors even. They say, nah, you're off track. And at times I feel like I've gone and followed that inner voice. And it's a wrestle, because it's like, is that voice pride? Is that voice arrogance? Because that's not going to lead to a good thing. But the times where I've followed the conviction and it's made an impact, I'm very proud of them. They're very private, fumbly moments and full of doubt, full of, was that the right call? Was that the right call? But actually, as time's gone on, I've seen the fruit of these unseen moments and decisions. I'm proud of that stuff.
Daniel, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time and joining us here.